had a bit of a moment. I think this is really great. So check this out. It's a talking smart contracts little web app. I found out today that Chrome has this web API which allows you to do speech to text. I thought we could put this into a decentralized Web3 chat room. And that's what I built. To start off with, I started building this with kind of a server client with Node.js on the back end and an index.html file on the front end. Then I realized you can actually do this with a serverless architecture. You don't need the Node.js server on the back end. You can simply have a simple smart contract which fires off events, have an index.html file hosted on GitHub and nothing in between. And that is a beautiful, elegant thing. So let's dive in and see how it works. All the code for this is open source on GitHub, obviously, and there's a full tutorial link to in the description. I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Soroban Playground and have a look at the contract first. This is it. They've got 13 lines of code in this contract, and all we're doing is we're accepting a public function. Someone can send in their address and a symbol, which is the message, the text string. We're going to check that they are who they say they are, and then we're going to publish an event with their address in the topic and their message as the value. Got a little unit test here. We can run that to check it works. If you want to deploy that to the network, you'd compile it to WebAssembly. That'll download a WASM file to your device, and then there's no constructor arguments, so you can just deploy it. And that'll go through and you'll get a contract ID. If we load that up in Stellar Expert, you can see there's the interface here. Talk with an address and a message. Let's close that down for now. This is the contract ID right here. If you want to set up your own chat room, you'd need to deploy your own contract, as this is all messages for this one are stored in a single contract. Now we've got our contract deployed. The only other thing we're using is this index.html file. Let's have a look at this in VS Code. So we've got some standard CSS and HTML here. Then we've got our contract ID here. We're setting up an RPC URL. An RPC node is like our entry point to the decentralized network. So we're going to connect to the Soroban testnet or the Stellar testnet using this RPC node address. We're going to send our transactions to this RPC node or this address, and that's going to propagate that around all the other nodes in the network. When we first initialize the page, we're going to create a new address. This is at the bottom, and we're going to use the Stellar SDK to create a random key pair and then give it some testnet funds using FriendBot. That just gives it some funds to send transactions and whatnot. We're then using the speech recognition API or WebKit speech recognition, and when we receive a result or on result, this means once you've said something, it's kind of registered that's the end of your piece of text. I'm going to trim that up and send it across to this send message function, which is just down here. We're going to sanitize it. We're going to limit the amount that someone can say. We're going to cut out any bad characters. And we also can't store a space in a symbol. So we're going to change that to an underscore and then change it back at a later date. We're going to create an operation. We're going to call the talk function, which matches the function name in our smart contract. We're going to add our address and the message, the sanitized string from up here, build that transaction, prepare the transaction, and send the transaction to the RPC node. Then got a little helper function to work with buffers, and we're going to fetch messages. So this is going to be pulled once every 10 seconds. We're going to contact the RPC node and say what messages are there on the network. And the way it does this is it uses events. So it's monitoring events using this RPC.getEvents function to find any interactions with our contract address in the last 8,000 blocks. We're then going to decode our values, our address and our message, and then render that into the chat box. And this just makes it look pretty and adds things like the block explorer down here. There you have it, 136 lines of code. In practice, let's have a look at what this looks like. So let's refresh the page. So it's going to generate an address and fund that address with some testnet XLM. We've got our address now. Hello world. It recognizes that I said something to the browser. You have to give the browser permission to use the microphone, obviously. And you can see it's come up here, hello world. We can view that transaction in a block explorer. And there's an immutable permanent record of everything you say to this little web app stored on chain forever. Now I may be biased because I'm working with Web3 all the time, but for me, this was a whole lot easier. A 13-line smart contract is a lot easier to set up than a database and some kind of centralized solution and Node.js servers hosted on VPSs and whatnot. This is just a very elegant, simple way to create a web app, which is, I mean, it's hosted on GitHub Pages. There's no web server here. To do that, all we go do is go into settings, pages, and enable it here. So GitHub Pages is currently built on your site. And that gives us this URL, which is your username.github.io, and then the repository name. And then because it's index.html, you don't even need the file name. And it's there hosted remotely for the whole world to use. If you were so inclined, you could also add a custom domain name to this. What a wonderfully elegant, simple example of what Web3 technology is capable of. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about building on Stellar and working in Web3, there's some resources in the description, and there's a full tutorial as well. Thank you for watching.